Well, welcome to another edition of our Rant, everybody. I've got some very special guests here. I've got Paul Sue out in BC and John Powers, a local realtor out of Vancouver, the North Shore specifically. And what we want to talk about today is, real estate specifically in Vancouver and the surrounding areas. And I've got my two local experts. And yeah, we're just gonna go from there. So thanks, guys, to both of you for being here today, remotely, of course. As it's been for the last almost.
Thanks, man. Thanks for setting this up, Hugo.
Yeah, no, thank you again for being here. We're already in January. It's a new year. I think we all have some sort of PTSD still from last year. But what's been interesting is, despite all the bad news, the real estate market has been very, very hot. We've been smashing a bunch of records in terms of sales. And given that we're in January already, which is typically not a busy time, we're already seeing it to be quite busy. I know the numbers have been pretty impressive already for January. So, I guess right off the top, John, what's your day like? How are things going? What kind of conversations are you having with people?
Lots of calls, just people, again, wanting to feel out the market, see what's happening, see where the pace is based on what we've all seen headline-wise coming out of December. A lot of talk specifics around, listing timeframes when we need to get up and going, really actively putting a plan in place to get the properties on the market, and buyers picking right back up where they were, trying to strategize, wait for the next round of listings to come out. I mean, that's been the biggest issue with the buyer side, is the lack of inventory that we're seeing right now, and really how the numbers are still so low coming into the new year, and really, how that's setting the trend in terms of what's available and the dynamics and the pressure on the market that way.
So it's definitely a seller's market out there as well, it sounds like.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Big time. It's
almost like it's time to cash in if you're looking to sell and possibly relocate or buy, take advantage of it. Do you have lots of bidding wars situations right now?
It's nonstop. It seems it's anything that's in the right price point, especially, North Van right now, we're looking at, a low inventory count, and anything that comes on seems to have multiple offers right out of the gate. So it's definitely sharpen the pencil mode for the buyers, really get your ducks in a row, understand where you are financing wise and what the dynamics are around what you're wanting, and really be active and ready to move on things right away.
So Paul, on the mortgage side, just to shift gears quickly, what kind of discussions are you having with clients, given that, they're going into very likely a very competitive environment? What kind of discussions are you having in terms of financing and preparing them? Are you trying to, having conversations around, maybe limiting or avoiding any conditions of financing, things like that? What's the strategy, with buyers right now?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's quite timely because I just had back-to-back clients yesterday, and it's a bit of a chess match between buyers and sellers, and a lot of sellers are not coming onto the market until the springtime, and buyers want to buy now. So what do you do? And the question I've asked my clients is, who are currently living in a townhome and trying to get into a single detached home, is what is more difficult, selling your home or finding a property that fits your needs? And every answer has always been, it's harder to find something that fits our needs. So then we have to position and strategize with the clients to say, well, if you find a place, you need to pull that trigger and we'll try to sell your home. Because if you sell your home first and you can't find anything, then you're homeless, and that doesn't work. And as a mortgage professional, what we always try to do is kind of prepare for the worst and hope for the best. So, I mean, I've told my clients, okay, I've got your financing figured out in the event that you are unable to sell your home, that you can still complete on the purchase. And I've also got you financing on the assumption that you've sold your home. So we will execute plan B if plan A doesn't work. And so far, it hasn't been a problem. I mean, my clients ended up selling their home before it listed because the realtor was smart, went back to other potential buyers in their development and said, hey, have you found something? Because I've got another unit coming up, but it's going to be listed on Monday. So if you want a chance, make the offer. And they sold it before listing, before staging, saved them a few bucks, and they've got their home that they need to buy. Now, when someone buys, I usually don't advise them to put a subject to financing on their purchase, because it's just not going to get accepted.
Yeah.
So what we can try to do is try to negotiate a longer closing date, so it gives them a bit of breathing room to try to sell their home.
Got it. So
and it's worked out. And like you said, I mean, I had a client yesterday offer 30,000 less than ask, and he got outbid by 60,000 over ask.
Yeah. Well, that's actually a good comment. That was going to be my next question. So, John, how many deals are going over ask right now?
I'd say the majority of them in the detached market. I mean, it's everything is active. Like Paul said, you're back to that mode where people are really having to strategize and really look big picture wise and what they're doing offer wise, and really come hard with their numbers. And I think people are also at that point where they've gone through 4 or 5 rounds of bidding on a property and missing out. And so you're getting those inevitable buyer groups that are stepping up and really just going full tilt on the number and really making sure that they lock it down as quickly as they can. And I think that's what we really saw through the acceleration of the end of the year last year, where people were really just actively almost panic mode, scrambling into properties and making sure that they were just writing a check to get in the door and get the property locked up so that they can move on to the next phase.
So, Paul, sort of similar question. I know that in Ontario, when you've got a market that's sort of growing pretty aggressively, and you're seeing a lot of offers over ask, sometimes what becomes an issue for financing is the appraisal. We've seen a couple files come through where they've overpaid for it according to the appraiser because there just isn't enough historical data to support that new price point or that new record level. Are you seeing any of those issues? Like, are you having appraisals come back maybe a little bit below the purchase price because we're sort of on this really aggressive uptick?
Not yet, but that's a very valid point. And fortunately, a lot of the clients that that I'm dealing with they're not first-time home buyers going into this single detached home, so they've got plenty of equity and a lot of wiggle room. So if they have overpaid, in the mortgage world, that doesn't mean the lender doesn't advance. They still will. You just got to come up with the difference, and a lot of times customers do. So.
Got it. So, John, what about?
Once their sale goes through, now they're the benchmark. So,
John, out of curiosity, so we've got COVID. There's been a lot of impacts to everything. The way we communicate. We're having this over Skype, unfortunately, not in person. Any trends on the real estate side with people, leaving the urban centers and sort of going to the suburban areas, or certain neighborhoods sort of becoming a little bit more popular? Any insights on that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's been the theme of the year. I think everybody was caught off guard with the way the market went and the dynamics around it. I think obviously the start of COVID, everybody was really expecting that slowdown and correction to happen, and it didn't. We went opposite direction. And a lot of that was driven by the fact that people were really wanting to get into detached properties, really wanting to have that extra room, extra space, have that yard for the kids to step out and enjoy. If you're going to be locked up, you want to at least have your own domain that you can still manage and have access to. And so that was really the push. I mean, we've seen a real slowdown, drop off in terms of the amount of sales for the downtown condo market. So that is really, people are leaving that area or not really focusing that as their prime zone for moving to. And alternatively, they're looking to kind of really move out into some of the suburbs. So Fraser Valley has been blistering hot. We've seen a lot of move and migration over to Vancouver Island, Gulf Islands. Bowen Island is a huge destination point for people. And these are trends that are already there. People were, empty nesters were looking to relocate and go over to Vancouver Island and set up shop. We had a lot of younger buyers that were wanting to find properties in the area that they could afford and have more access to. Places like Bowen, that's a 20-minute ferry ride away from the downtown core. The limitation there was the commute factor, getting back and forth and dealing with work components. Obviously, with the pandemic and the push to being more online and having remote access work, that's changed that dramatically. And so people realize that they can go off, they can be in the suburbs and still have that access to work and really see what that dynamic looks like longer term, but still be able to have a property, have acreage, have something that for them makes sense, especially in the pandemic mode of what we're seeing. So that's been the overall, theme of the day in terms of where things are going market-wise. It's detached market is king. Everybody's wanting space, and that's where things are going generally in terms of both detached market for buyers, but also if they're not moving into a detached property, they're looking to go to the suburbs for a condo. So again, there's a little bit more space. Often you get a little bit more square footage for your price. So it just offers more of that availability of extra space in terms of pandemic mode.
And so, Paul, going on the mortgage, some mortgage questions. Given that rates are historically super low, are you and you know, again, it's a seller market, so the market is heating up and the values are there. Are you having a lot of clients reaching out to you who may not be interested in selling or buying, but they're looking to refinance and trying to tap into that equity, maybe for investment purposes or just build in a HELOC type strategy? Is that a lot of conversations like that?
Absolutely. I mean, especially if clients are looking to, you know, perhaps buy an investment property or even upgrade, in which they're going to need to write a check for deposit prior to sell. You know, I always tell them, if you're going to consider selling or even moving or upgrading or investing, it's important that you kind of get your finances in order first, whether it's get a HELOC so that you have access to funds for a deposit, because you can't refinance and get a HELOC once you've listed the property. Lenders aren't in the business of financing properties listed for sale, because mortgages are long-term debt, not short-term solutions. You know, and to John's point, you know, I think traditionally everybody migrates to the city core, because as the economy is not doing so well, you know, people are having a tough time looking for work. They migrate to the city because that's where work is. But, you know, necessity is the mother of all inventions, and you know, in this new age, people can work remotely, and you know, that's the new norm. So people are, again, moving out to the valley. The Fraser Valley is, like you said, John, on fire. So absolutely.
No, you know, one thing I've been reading a lot about is a lot of, you know, there's a trend to migrate to bigger spaces, more affordable locations because of the access and the ability to work remotely. But I'm curious, you know, in 1, 2, 3 years, people might be like, you know what, I actually like being downtown Vancouver. I like walking over and getting, you know, all those local amenities. Do you think that there may be a possible retreat back to, you know, the condo market or all these other locations where people realize, you know what, I actually don't want to be out so far away from the city? Is that something you could think could happen as well?
Oh, I totally see that being the case. I think what we're dealing with right now is a lot of the immediate effects of COVID and the dynamics around that. But I think long term, you're always going to look at the attractiveness or desirability of living downtown, living in a, you know, Cole Harbor, Yaletown, Kitsilano. Those are always going to be a draw longer term in terms of the real estate market. And I think that's the opportunity as well. So again, it's if you're seeing, you know, neighborhoods that are kind of slowed down, that traditionally are a very hot commodity, and you're looking to get in and not as affected by the space components of COVID, then, you know, now may be that great time to really be looking at those dynamics, because I think long term, in terms of the Vancouver real estate market, they're always going to be a demand factor for those key areas downtown.
Got it. And, you know, what are you telling, I guess, first-time buyers that are feeling priced out? You know, any sort of comments on, you know, strategies or feedback you're giving to some of these guys who are trying to get into the market?
Yeah, I mean, I think have your ducks in a row, really understand your dynamics around the financing, but also don't write it off. I mean, we all want to live in that ideal neighborhood, that kind of end goal neighborhood right off the bat. But you know, majority of people I know never started that way. We always started at a further out point and worked our way back up. And so maybe that's the opportunity now. There's some very fantastic neighborhoods that have been developed over the last few years that have been kind of pushed off or haven't been as attractive for buyers because of always having to factor in the work component and commuting into downtown. And that's not as much of the issue. So now, you know, whether it's Squamish up the Sea to Sky Highway, whether it's Bowen, whether it's you know, somewhere out near Langley, Mission, things like that, they're a lot more of a affordable option for people. Obviously, work-life balance can really kind of maintain it where it is in terms of COVID and everything else with work-related, you know, distance. And you still have the affordability factor, and you can always gear towards coming back towards the city center if that suits your needs down the road. There's always that option. It doesn't have to be, you know, direct to exactly where you want to be. Let's work out a long-term strategy and kind of go from there.
Cool. Paul, any last minute comments? You know, I know, you know, it's interesting, you know, COVID's been such a negative thing, but it's been actually really good in a lot of other aspects in terms of finding ways to be more efficient for companies and for individuals, finding a way to use technology so we can all kind of operate maybe better than we were before. But in the real estate side, it's actually been interesting because it's actually allowed that market to grow and areas to grow that previously weren't. Any sort of last minute comments to people that may be on the sidelines or worried about, I don't know where the market's going, I don't know if, I'm concerned about income or anything like that? Any sort of comments, you advise your clients?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to being on the sideline, the last thing you want to do is get priced out of the market. And, real estate goes up, real estate goes down. If it's your primary residence, it's paper rich, paper poor.
Yeah.
Unless you sell it and cash out and live in a hut, it doesn't really make a whole lot. But certainly getting your finances in order, not just whether you have job security or anything like that, but also talk to a broker like myself or, a real estate professional to make sure that, this is a reasonable ask, because, rates are so historically low and prices are going up. It makes me a little nervous because, I asked this question of my client yesterday. I said, is 4% unreasonable? And they said, yeah, that's really high. And I said, nah, it's really not that high. A year and a half ago, you were at 3.24. So, I don't know why 4% is unreasonable. Well, you're sub 2, and a 4% interest rate means that your interest costs have just doubled.
Yeah.
If you're not going to be comfortable with that, you should be very wary, or, if you can afford it, prove it by making additional payments, because that will offset any increases in future hikes and rates, right?
Yeah.
Because it's
definitely,
for sure, your sub 2% is not gonna last the lifetime of your mortgage.
Yeah,
it just
that's almost a whole other rant. It's a really good point.
Yeah,
People are buying million plus properties with huge mortgages, and they're basing their whole budget around 1.5% rates. So they've got these very small payments, and their whole budget's based on that. They're maybe adding more cars and maybe taking more trips. Well, maybe not trips these days, but and then 5 years from now, or maybe less than 5 years, when rates go back to that 3% plus range, in essence, you've doubled your rates. If you haven't built in a bit of a buffer and you've accommodated your life around this extremely low rate, that's a whole other problem that, I think might be coming down the road. That's a good tip. I always tell clients, pretend your rate is 3% and just budget that way. Maybe you don't need to pay down your mortgage, but maybe just set that money aside. Just pretend that is an expense, so that when the rate does come in, you're not sort of, taken by surprise. That's a good tip. But one very important last question, John, for you.
Sure.
I know Vancouver has a little bit lighter restrictions around COVID than we're seeing here. Essentially, we can't do anything in Toronto.
Right.
As soon as COVID is behind us and we can go back to normal, what is the first thing you want to do as soon as you can?
That's easy. It's I'm an expat, originally from the States, so get down to see my mom in Portland. Okay. It's been way too long, and she's had some health issues that certainly would love to be a little bit more front and center to help out with. So that would be first and foremost.
Nice. Yeah, and hopefully in the next couple months, if we can get some more vaccines and these numbers down, that sort of eases up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you, Paul, what's on the post-COVID?
My group of boys that we usually plan a golf trip, we're gonna go somewhere sunny.
Yeah, that's pretty much mine. Is get somewhere warm, get some beach, some really hot sun, because the winter, unlike Vancouver, in Toronto is a lot colder, so it's tough. But I think we'll have to hang in there. But John and Paul, thank you so much for being on the rant and sharing all these great insights. Looking forward to 2021. I think it's going to be a great year in regards to everything, and I wish you guys all the best. And again, thanks again.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Hugo.
Thanks, Hugo. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. And we'll talk soon, okay?
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Paul.
Okay.
Take care, guys.